Welcome to Transformed and Transformational, a TeachBeyond podcast. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're here to explore what it means to be transformed in our own lives and how that overflows to living lives of transformational impact in our communities.
So Heather, as we inch ever closer to Christmas, I am sure your world, like mine, is just becoming surrounded by Christmas music.
So true. Kian, do you have a favorite Christmas song?
This is probably a bad thing to say, especially knowing the episode topic is about music. But I was never a big fan of Christmas music growing up. So
okay, this is definitely going to be controversial.
it has started to change in the last few years. I feel like I've come to appreciate more Christmas music than I used to. So that also means that I don't have a lot of songs I look back to fondly as like part of my childhood, with the one exception of I really liked Little Drummer Boy, which I feel like is a controversial pick. I feel like most people don't like that song at all.
I'm trying to think why. I guess it just feels repetitive, or like, what does a drum have to do with the Christmas story? I don't know.
I think the reason I like it is because it is repetitive, but it's repetitive in the ba-rum-pum-pum-pum part, which is my favorite part. I think across all musical genres, any gimmick voice trick kind of thing, which I guess ba-rum-pum-pum-pum is, just will get me. Those hooks will work for me every time.
I just wanted to see if I can get you to say pum 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 again. Just how many times can I get you to say that in this episode? Because that was really well done. I did not execute that quite as well. Oh man, I guess that makes sense. If you like that kind of thing, then that's a great song for you. I'm trying to think about what my answer would be to that question that I posed to you. And I guess I don't really have a typical answer to this question either. As much as I enjoy a lot of the traditional Christmas carols. I think as a kid, it was Angels We Have Heard on High. I really liked that like long Gloria in the chorus, but I really now I think I just enjoy the new releases of contemporary albums that have original Christmas songs alongside their renditions of the traditional Christmas carols. Because I think it's interesting to hear how modern artists will also kind of pull out the Christmas story that's super well known in new and creative ways to kind of see it through a new lens. So I guess that's not really an answer at all to one song, but it's like, listening to the new ones that come out each year.
I think that's fascinating. Just the idea that it's not the old classics. You're interested in hearing the new things, and the new way people are sharing the story it's an interesting perspective towards Christmas music of not just like the classic Christmas songs, but the way the story is told is great.
Yeah. Well, our guest today is Olivia Bomgardner, who serves with TeachBeyond as a music teacher at Evangelical Christian Academy in Spain. Olivia has a bachelor's in music education from Cairn University, and we're going to be talking with her about Christmas music, obviously, as well as her journey to becoming a music teacher and serving with TeachBeyond.
Let's go over to that conversation with Olivia now. Hi, Olivia. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Olivia, it is great to have you, especially this time of year as it's Christmas. You're a music teacher, and Christmas music is such a big part of the season. And I know that this is a big time of year for you too, as a music teacher. So as we're getting started, Kian and I were just talking about our favorite Christmas carols. So big question for you. I know this is a hard one. If you had to pick a favorite Christmas carol, what would that be?
Yeah, this is such a hard question. I think as somebody who grew up listening to Christmas carols and singing them a lot, but I think my first choice, maybe this minute, would be Come Thou Long Expected Jesus.
Nice.
It's maybe a less well-known one, but I love the season of Advent, and I love the lessons that can be learned in waiting. And so to sing Come Thou Long Expected Jesus in expectation, and also with the knowledge that he has already come, is important for me and my faith.
That is a great choice. As you mentioned, there's so many Christmas songs and so many things that people lean to each season, each year. Maybe it changes. What is it about Christmas music that draws you to it? And what kind of music this time of year, even as you mentioned the Advent season as well?
I think, I don't know, there's like a magic or something in Christmas music, or there's so much wrapped up in Christmas music being connected to setting up your tree, or hearing it in the stores or around town. There's just like so many places for music to be played during the Christmas season. And I think that magic of like hearing the music as well as doing something like cookies or something. Um, I don't know, it just is like special. But as far as singing, since I am a music teacher, singing is a huge part of my life. But singing about something so significant as Christ's birth definitely brings a difference as far in comparison to other parts of the year. I think also just again thinking about Advent, different songs that can be sung in waiting. Yeah, those it just is I don't know important. It has extra
Yeah.
importance.
Yeah. I love how you brought up the waiting, and this even ties back to the song Come Thou Long Expect Jesus that you mentioned
Mm.
earlier, that there is something about music that draws us in and develops that sense of anticipation and longing that we can even feel. I mean, I'm sure you have thoughts on the emotions around music and just how that draws us in, and that seems really important this time of year.
Yeah, there's a lesson that I do with my students, not necessarily at Christmas, but I don't even know where this video came from, but there's a video, I think it's a scene from Lord of the Rings, where they take the music out and they just
Aha.
play the video in front of you, and without the
Um,
music that's, like, building up the anticipation, which is what you're talking about, it's, like, such a dead scene.
yeah.
And then they add, like, silly music in to, like, replace this, like, buildup of big, majestic type of music, and it just changes everything, and so
Huh.
that teaches that music has this ability to draw out emotions, like you're saying,
Yeah.
and, really just, I don't know, speak to us in a different way. It's a gift,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really neat. Well, as I alluded to before, I know this is a big time of year as a music teacher. Beyond just enjoying music yourself, what does Christmas look like for you as a music teacher? I won't make you speak on behalf of all music teachers, but maybe you can tell us specifically the classes you teach. I know that can vary widely from one music teacher to another, and what it looks like to be preparing for and walking through this season with your students.
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes I question my job choice when it's October 1st and I'm singing Christmas songs.
Right, right.
But in that is in anticipation of the Christmas season. And it's a good thing to practice and take time to really get things down for my students and I. But that's really what this first fall semester looks like for a lot of the music classes that I will teach here in Spain. Um, I'm a part of the high school choir class, and so I usually help a lot with just accompanying on the piano. But we're singing Christmas music from day one. um, one of the songs this year was White Christmas, and here in Spain it doesn't really even snow, but we're singing about a white Christmas anyway.
Right.
Um, and then I also teach elementary music, and so for an elementary music teacher, to do Christmas music for months and months and months, starting in September, the kids usually get bored with that a little bit. So
Sure.
I usually start mid October, but this year are working on a Christmas pageant. And so my students have been working hard on their lines and their songs, and everything's working out with props. And so,
Wow.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
I'm happy to be a part of the season in a musical way for sure.
That's a big deal to not only have, a song and then a break and then the next song, but to actually tell a story, to have the drama element of a production like that. That's a big undertaking. Wow.
Yeah, I think it was actually an idea from my students. I had done a more traditional way before where you just have a song and then a break, but they really latched on to this acting thing. They really love the drama, I guess. So it
That's
works out
great.
well for me because they're motivated to pay attention and then
Sure.
they get to put on a show for their parents as well.
Olivia, you've mentioned the choir, you've mentioned playing piano. Do you have a favorite role to play? Like, do you want to be directing, accompanying? And what about, leading choir versus an instrumental group? Do you have any preferences as a music teacher?
That's a really good question. I enjoy all aspects of those things that you mentioned. However, I think maybe because I've done it for the longest, I really enjoy accompanying. I
Mm,
love directing things. I feel like I have some gifts in leadership in that way, but being able to sit back and kind of be in the background without having to do so much in front of people, not because I'm nervous, but just because I like to watch it all happen.
yeah, yeah.
I really enjoy the accompanying role.
It's neat that you have opportunity to do both of those roles. And it seems like when you're directing, when you're leading, you would have more input into maybe song selection or
Mm.
putting together the program. So can you talk to us about when you're in that role, what goes into selecting music? Kind of you mentioned bringing your students into that this particular year with the production. So tell us more about that.
Here at this school, I think I've had more opportunity to involve the students in selection. Maybe because there's less students, or maybe because I trust their judgment. I don't know, but I think it's important for them to want to sing and be motivated by their own desire to sing the songs that are chosen, whether they're chosen for them, or if they're choosing them themselves. But I think it's better if they have some motivation just by having a choice in the matter. So a lot of times I like to give, like, out of these three songs, which one would you want to sing?
Neat.
And sometimes that gets tricky with ordering music, and not everybody gets pleased, but it does give them a way in to the process. And a lot of times they get really excited about that particular song. So yeah, it just depends kind of on the year or who's interested, what they're interested in, but I really enjoy being able to give them a part in that. And then kind of being able to form and create and use a creative side for sure of my own brain to be able to create what this program will look like. Will it be cohesive between different grades, different levels, or will it just be kind of section by section?
That's interesting. It's really interesting to hear how you lead your music class and your kind of love for the students and their engagement in the music you're singing and getting them involved. I'm so curious about your journey to become a music teacher. And it seems like you love music, obviously. Like music has a big part in singing, listening, and all those things. So have you always loved music and wanted to become a music teacher? Kind of what was that journey like?
Yeah, it was a long journey. um, I began playing the piano when I was 3, and when I was 5, I begged my parents for piano lessons. And at that point, I had a desire to be a music teacher, and so for the rest of my growing up years in my parents' house, that's really the goal that I was working towards. If you ask my parents about this, especially my mom, there were several times where I claimed that I was going to be quitting piano lessons because I was so frustrated. But somehow I always came back.
That's good for the person who's, like, thinking about quitting piano lessons right now to hear
Yeah.
that they push through, just keep going.
Yes, absolutely. Really, for anything that you want to do, I mean, it's so important to put in the work. But yeah, and then in college, I had a music education major. That was my major. And, of course, there were things that I didn't love about that experience, but most things I really enjoyed, just learning about how to better work on myself as a teacher, as a musician, thinking about all those things that I would eventually be able to do. And so then becoming a music teacher and even having concerts be part of my regular rhythm of a school year, I think about in comparison to other teachers, really this is a huge part of my job, is to be like planning this event really for two different parts of the year and then carry out that event. So yeah, music, as long as I'm a teacher, I think it will always be part of my life. And even if I'm not, I think the Lord has really placed a huge desire to continue learning and growing as a musician in general.
It's so interesting that development, how much it shapes you and kind of forms into who you become. Was there anything specific you learned about yourself as a musician during when you were going through that program?
I think I learned that this cannot be my identity. Now, when I was in college, I developed a wrist injury, and piano playing was a huge part of my course load, and I couldn't complete that anymore. And I had to switch to study voice instead as a focus, and I was really angry with the Lord for that because piano, like I said, had been part of my life since I was 3 years old, and now at 19, 20 years old, I really think that He was asking me to give that up. Like, how far will you go to trust that my plan is better than yours? And in those moments, like I said, there was a lot of anger and frustration and a lot of tears. But I think studying the way that he chose my path to be with piano as starting and then moving to voice has helped me to develop as a better teacher in the classroom, giving me different tools to use and opportunities and just different things that I was a part of in college to prepare me for what he had for my life in the future. But it was a big struggle, and the biggest thing that I learned, I think, in those years were that when somebody asks me who I am, before I went to college, I probably would have said one of the first things that I'm a musician. I play the piano and I love that about myself. But after this struggle in my life, I learned to say I'm a child of God, or I belong to the Lord, or I serve the King, whichever is appropriate, I guess, in that moment. And then I also love playing the piano. So yeah, that's something that definitely formed me.
Yeah, I just think that's so interesting how you mentioned earlier accompanying. So obviously you're still using your piano playing ability in teaching music and in your work with Teach Beyond, but having that voice major does make you even more of a well-rounded teacher, but wasn't an easy moment to walk through that part. So that's really amazing to be able to look back and see how God was at work in that, but also recognize that that was a difficult point in the journey. And Olivia, I had the privilege of walking through the process with you while you were applying to Teach Beyond. But I'm wondering, even a little bit before that, could you share a little bit about how you learned about the potential of teaching overseas, how you got connected with Teach Beyond and the school in Spain where you work? Tell us a little bit more about that process for you.
Yeah. When I was in college at the end of my studies, I went on a missions trip to Macedonia. And that really, I think, was the start of just my brain thinking about, wow, this could be an option. Um, in Macedonia, we did a lot of like conversation classes and just welcoming people and going to different cafes and having conversations that were kind of pre set up. But thinking about, could this be part of my future? Could I actually go to another country? I mean, the Lord had really, up until that point, placed a big burden in my heart for public school teaching. And so I even changed my student teaching placement to be two public schools instead of one Christian and one public school because I was like, I will never teach in a Christian school ever.
Huh.
And here I am thinking that I know the plan for the rest of my life. And the Lord now has me in a Christian school. But anyway, at that point, at the end of my studies, I took that mission trip and I was also preparing for my senior recital at that point. And even on the mission trip, I was like, I need to be careful because my voice, I need to take care of my voice. I couldn't do all these different things. And after that, I went to visit some friends in Ecuador who had heard of this position in Spain that was open. And my friend said, you should just consider it, like, just look into it. And I was like, no, 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 no. But I ended up looking into it. And then, really, each step after that, I was encouraged to look into the next step. And in my mind, I was like, no, no, no. I mean, I could look at it, but I don't have to say yes. I could do it, but I don't have to say yes. And that was kind of always my attitude to the next step. And then after the interview that I had with the director here in Spain, I really thought about like this could be an option. And I mean, why not? What's holding me back? So at that point, that's when I learned about Teach Beyond and I got in touch with Heather and decided to pursue it even further.
That's amazing how each of those steps you kind of said like, I can always back out, but you did keep taking those next steps. You didn't just not do them. Your decision of I could always stop was still moving forward is a really interesting kind of posture to go through these steps in. What was kind of the tipping point where all of a sudden you're like, oh, this, I will say yes to this? Because at some point you can't, I mean, you can always kind of back out eventually. But what was the point where you're kind of like, okay, this is a turning point for me?
I don't know. I don't remember a point where I was like, okay, I'm going for this, but I do remember feeling like, okay, I can't back out now. I think so many people in my life had been encouraging about this and had just seen things like that, things that were not falling into place for me in other areas. Like I didn't have a full-time teaching position that I was going to have to leave. And I was looking for that in a public school. Like I said, that had been my passion. So, for those things not to work out and for this path to kind of come together, I think the Lord was really working all of those things together for me to be able to see, okay, this is the way you need to go. And yes, you're saying yes to these things with kind of a half-hearted attitude, but this is actually the way. So just like, let me give you a shove.
Yeah, I think it's so often we hear this a lot that it's not like there's one clear moment or even that there's clarity from the very beginning, but that there is kind of that step by step obedience. And I hear that in your story too, Olivia. And it's funny to think about how you heard about this job from a family in Ecuador. That might seem normal to you because it's part of your story, but how were they the ones who knew about that position and how is Macedonia connected to all of this? But it's part of how God has woven that story in your life and the connections, the conversations you had with people who helped make this a reality, like that this could be a reality. And helped bring that idea to life. I think if I'm hearing you correctly, were helpful along the journey to say, oh, no, this could actually be something that I do and kind of solidifying that for you.
I think the encouragement from brothers and sisters in Christ,
Yeah.
including my family, but I would not say that my family was necessarily the first to be on that
Mhm.
bandwagon. But hearing from other people who know me so well to say, yes, I think this would be a great option for you. I think there was just an importance for me in seeking wisdom from those people. And I think that is such a beautiful thing in what the Lord has created the body of Christ to be.
What kind of obstacles were you facing during that time? There's that period of time where you're exploring, you're interviewing, you're applying, you're praying and wondering. What were some of the obstacles you faced during that time?
Some of the obstacles were the wanting of this like a public school teaching position. I had accepted it was considered, I think, long-term sub position, but the position was open an area of Pennsylvania where I was living, and it was a middle school placement, which I was really interested in because I think
Mhm.
middle schoolers are weird and hilarious. And um, I was so excited, and I got the position and was under the impression that it would um, lead me to getting the full time position. And so I was working towards that, and I ended up not getting the full time position. And I was really disappointed because I really thought that the Lord had led me there, like in a place to stay there for like the next few years at least. And that's the way it looked. And so for that to kind of fail and fizzle out, at the same time that this Spain thing popped up, um, it was, I mean, of course, of the Lord, but that was definitely a letdown or a disappointment, an obstacle. Um, Other things were, I think, just thinking about like I just went through all of this schooling and I don't have a job. And just to think about like, okay, like, did I just do all this work for nothing? Um, and and I think that was maybe the Lord trying to teach me some patience. Um, sometimes I sometimes substitute teaching is where it's at. I, you learn a lot through that, or yeah, just being able to lean into thinking about, again, back to Advent, what can we learn in this waiting season, about what the Lord has for us, thinking about the lessons that come in that time.
Olivia, with all that in mind, what would you say to your past self knowing what you do know now?
I think I would say the Lord is good always, and his plan is not going to be ours, as he tells us in his word, but also I would say that the waiting is a good time to focus on him. And as we do that, we're growing in our relationship to him. I think it's one of the main ways that he asks us to be close to him. And I think I would encourage my past self to lean into that a little bit more, and to, I think, encourage others as well, during that time.
I love how hearing how God has shaped you and how committed you are to leaning into what God wants for you, even as you might have applied half-heartedly at first, but you did apply and you kept moving. And that's such a testament to seeing what God has for you and where he'll take you, even as you're have different things and goals, but you're still following the steps God puts before you.
And I wouldn't say it was
Mhm.
half-hearted as much as it was hesitating, like you brought up Olivia, like, oh, I don't really know. And I think that there are many people who consider missions without feeling like their heart is fully in it, but it's still not a half-hearted application. It's a, I don't know what God's doing with this application, and the Lord uses that and really, uses that time of discernment, whether it ends up, turning into going overseas or not, for a chance to grow in patience and trust and all the things you're talking about.
So thank you so much, Olivia, for joining us. And before we let you go, though, we have one big question we like to ask all of our guests before we say goodbye.
We
Is what
started
is
with a big question, we're ending with a big question.
similar levels of big questions too.
Yeah.
So, what is one thing that is changing your life right now? So, this can be something really big and something dramatic, something personal, or it can be something small and light, kind of wherever you want to take it. But what's something that's changing your life right now? I'll go first, and then Heather, and so you have a little bit of time to think about what you'd like to share. But for me, this week, the thing that's been changing my life is that it's Hanukkah. Tonight's actually the last night of Hanukkah. If you're listening to this on Friday, in my family, because we're Messianic Jews, we've been celebrating it all week. So it's
Mhm.
been really fun to celebrate as a family, to share with my kids the story of Hanukkah and what we're celebrating. So it's been a fun week.
That's great. Mine's also very tied in with the season and holidays, but a little bit later, I guess. I love that I was starting to get Christmas cards from friends. And when I was growing up, my family always like made it a big deal at the dinner table. We would pull out whatever Christmas cards had come in the mail that day, and we divvied them up so it was even. Everyone got a chance to open a Christmas card if there were at least four, and if there were more, we tried to rotate who had the extras or give them to the person who knew that person best. But it's fun. I have such fond memories of knowing my parents' friends, like their college friends, for example, just because we had read their Christmas letters each year. And I really hadn't met some of them. But even now we'll like refer to that family as, oh, that's the family that had the story about the rollerblades in their Christmas letter. um, and so it's really fun now as living on my own to be receiving Christmas cards at my address and staying in touch with people in that way. I think it's probably less common now than it was when I was growing up for people to mail cards, but I'm happy that it is still happening. So that's something that's changing my life lately. What about you, Olivia?
I think mine is also lighthearted, and I don't want to give the wrong impression that there is a Trader Joe's here in Spain. There is not.
Okay, okay.
However, however, I'm a huge Trader Joe's fan, and I received a box of dark chocolate covered JoJo's with
Oh,
peppermint
yeah.
sprinkles on them.
Yes.
And those, I think, are changing my life this week for sure.
Good. Oh, I'm so glad you've got a Trader Joe's treat there to enjoy in Spain. That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Olivia, for coming on the podcast to share your story, to share about what it looks like to be a music teacher this time of year. And we're just so grateful to be serving together with you and Teach Beyond.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great to share.
For our weekly spotlight, we are focusing on Evangelical Christian Academy in Spain. If you'd like to join Olivia and the rest of the team there, visit teachbeyond.org/go or click on the link in the show notes.
Kian, Olivia, and I serve with an organization called Teach Beyond. As you've heard, education plays a big role in missions, and Teach Beyond is a part of that.
As followers of Jesus, TeachBeyond is a global community providing transformational education services as part of God's ongoing mission to transform individuals and communities into all He intends.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about Teach Beyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share this show with a friend. Be sure you're subscribed or following the show on the platform where you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast@teachbeyond.org. We'll see you next week for a week of Christmas episodes.
The mystery word for this week is education.